What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am the Cheese Lord, and today I am going through one question that every NFL team has going into this next season. So starting off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and my questions for you are about your wide receiver room. How are they going to hold up? Because Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, for a portion of the season last year, both got hurt, and they stayed hurt for a little while, which really harmed your offense, starting with your fourth and fifth string receivers having to be your main pass catchers. So the question is, with an aging Mike Evans and an aging Chris Godwin, both of them now being seasoned veterans, can they hold up? And if they can't, can Emeka Egbuka hold up to the status as he's your first round rookie, who is supposed to be an incredible prospect at wide receiver? So can he take over if Mike Evans and Chris Godwin fail? My next question is for the Kansas City Chiefs. By the way, this is in a random order, and that is, can Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes continue to be your guys? Kelce and Mahomes both slowed down last year, and instead of being one of the best offenses in the league, they had one of the best defenses in the league, which is a big switch up from what they normally have. So can these two individuals still reign supreme in the NFL? Of course, both of them just having down years. Is that going to continue, as they're both now very old? Travis Kelce is now 34, I believe, and Patrick Mahomes is 28, so he'll survive for a while. But can Travis Kelce stay on the pedestal as the best tight end in the league, especially with the rise of Brock Bowers? My next question is for the Washington Commanders, and my question for them is, can they still hold on as one of the best teams in the NFC? As last season, they were heavily criticized on their offseason due to them getting a bunch of really old players who were looking to be washed going into the season. The question for me is, are they going to get washed this year? That includes people like Zach Ertz, Bobby Wagner, a bunch of other defensive guys that you had on your roster. Can they still hold up and help you produce, as Jaden Daniels is trying to get better and better? Guys like Austin Eckler may be falling off and harming his production. My next question is for the New Orleans Saints, and this is an easy one. There's two teams in here that have the easiest question, and who is going to be the starting quarterback for you next year? You spent your one of your draft picks on very experimental prospect Tyler Shuck, who is already older than some of your quarterbacks on your roster, only as a rookie. He's also had some very questionable plays in college, a bunch of injuries, and a bunch of critiques. So can he step up? And then if not, can Spencer Rattler step up? He didn't look good last year. It was his rookie year, but then again, they already had their backup. Two of their wide receivers hurt. Two of their tight ends hurt. Their running back hurt. So he was playing with the bare minimum, and that's already of a roster that doesn't have a lot of stacked talent on the offense that can at least stay healthy. And if not him, can Jay Kaner step up? He's been on that roster a couple of years and just stayed as the backup, not really stepping up. My next question is for the Los Angeles Chargers, and my question for them is, did you get Herbert the help that he needed? Obviously, Justin Herbert has been in a tough situation this past year, as his main target was a rookie Ladd McConkey, who wasn't even drafted to be an incredible prospect, which, lucky for him, he turned out to be. But they have a hole at tight end. They have a hole at wide receiver 2, 3, on and on, because Quentin Johnston didn't pan out to be what they wanted to be. So is Ladd McConkey the solution to all your problems? And even with that, is Herbert the guy? Herbert's been in there for a while. He was Offensive Rookie of the Year when he was a rookie. And the only issue is he hasn't been able to perform when it was most needed. For example, this past game that he had against the Texans, where he threw 5 interceptions and it was a playoff game. So is he the guy, and is Ladd McConkey the guy that can help him reach his true form? Obviously, we've seen him with guys like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams already, and he looked really good. So can he just live up to the hype? The other team that had that quarterback question, who is going to be their starter? They have a veteran, Joe Flacco, in there, who last time he was with the Browns 2 years ago, he was really good, but he's really aging, one of the oldest quarterbacks in the league now, and he's really fallen off last year. As second, as I believe, is Shedeur Sanders, who was expected to be maybe a top 3, top 5 pick in the draft, who slid all the way down to the 5th round, which nobody expected. There's a bunch of questions about his personality, where he was really obnoxious, and apparently he showed a lot of traits that the coaches didn't like. Meanwhile, though, his talent is one of the best out of the draft class of all players at this point. He was supposed to be the second draft quarterback off the board due to throws like the one that we just saw. The other player on there is Dylan Gabriel, who is a quarterback drafted above him in his same draft class, who apparently has been looking decent, not as good as Shedeur in training camp, but a lot of the Browns management seem to like Dylan Gabriel a lot. And then the final guy is Kenny Pickett, who is a Super Bowl champion, may or may not be as a backup, but he played in your same division for a while. He didn't play up to his potential at all. So who is going to be the guy who starts week 1, which I believe is Joe Flacco, and who's going to be the guy who starts week 18, which I believe is going to be Shedeur? The next player that I'm here to talk about is going to be on the Dolphins, and that is actually a lot of their players and the validity about how they're going to do this next season. Starting off with Tua Tagovailoa. As we can see with his previous play, he is still a very good quarterback in the league, but he cannot stay healthy, especially with his head injuries. And it's possible that if he sustains another head injury, he sadly won't be able to play football anymore. And there could be very harsh repercussions. And there is a lot of debate about if he should retire in the middle of the season just to save his health in general. And then you also have guys like Tyreek Hill, who are very old at this point, who are still playing good, but he had a down year last year, which is putting a little bit of question into if he can still produce. Obviously, he's only 1 year removed from having one of the best wide receiver seasons that we have ever seen in the history of the NFL. So the big question is about him. And then also Jalen Ramsey. He's another guy who's really old. He's a prospect to get traded and is probably going to get traded within the next few weeks of the time that I'm filming this. So it's a big question about if he can also produce. Also, they just lost Teron Armstead out of retirement during this offseason, and their O-line was already struggling with him in it. So how good they are without him is also up to question. And it really just depends on how each of these players can do, which really depends on how successful the Dolphins are going into this next year. Our next team is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles, and I kind of struggled to come up with a question between them, and a lot of them resided on their defense. The one that I ended up picking was, is Zach Bond your guy? Zach Bond couldn't produce for the first 3 years that he was in the league, and he was already a questionable prospect coming out of college. And then he turned out to be an absolute demon this year when signing with the super team. But in the way that are the quarterbacks, a system quarterback is Zach Bond, just a system middle linebacker, in the way that he can command his team and make the plays. But if he didn't have them, would it be a little bit harder for him? I know it's not exactly the same in that sense, but the question really is, after 1 year, can you trust him to be your guy? Can you trust him to be your franchise middle linebackers? He's already 28 years old. And how far are you willing to go with him? How much are you willing to pay him? How much are you willing to depend on him going to these next years? My next question is for the Indianapolis Colts, and this is one of the easiest ones to find out, and that is Anthony Richardson your guy? Anthony Richardson was picked with the 4th pick in an NFL draft, and he was only playing a few games of college, but he looked really good in those games. He couldn't stay healthy, though, and that's kind of the same play that we've seen in the NFL today. Obviously, though, he's one of the most physically talented quarterbacks that we have honestly ever seen. His arm is absolutely insane. His movability is unbelievable, and it is unparalleled. He plays as a running back sometimes when Jonathan Taylor's hurt, in the way that they make him run the ball so much. The question is, A, can he stay healthy? And B, can he read a defense? Anthony Richardson not only can't stay healthy, but from what we've seen, he is one of the worst quarterbacks to ever pass the ball as a starter for multiple years. This is not an exaggeration. He has one of the worst completion percentages of all time of a starting quarterback, especially for this season. He was in the top 10 worst QBRs, or completion percentage. I forgot what the stat was, for any quarterback in the NFL in history for a single season. So can he end up producing, and can he get himself back on track? Obviously, where he's going to his 3rd year. He only has 1 year after that on contract before they can let him go. So what is going to be the play for him? So my next question is for the Atlanta Falcons, and my question for you guys is Michael Penix your quarterback? It's very different from the last question, though, as it is worded the same. It is a very different circumstance. Michael Penix was drafted in the 1st round of the 2023 NFL Draft, but he only played a few games this season, not even due to injury, because they signed Kirk Cousins and relied on him until they couldn't anymore without getting insane backlash due to his very poor performance leading the NFL in interceptions before he was benched. Michael Penix, in his few games that we played, he threw a couple of interceptions, a couple touchdowns, some good yardage. So is he that guy? And also with his interceptions, he had 3, I believe, and 2 of them were off the hands of receivers. So can he be your future guy, and can he lead you to success? Of course, you have a history of your left-handed quarterbacks in Atlanta. being very good, especially when they are black and have one letter away from a certain nickname. So can he be your person that can lead you to the promised land? My next question is for the New York Jets, and that question is about the validity of Breece Hall. Breece Hall has been in the league a couple of years, and he's looked like an insane prospect with a bunch of potential and a bunch of skill, but his production hasn't been incredible, and he's also been hurt a lot. He's kind of like a Kyle Pitts in the way that people really relied on him, and they keep thinking that he's this incredible prospect, and then year in and year out, they don't really talk about him due to injury and lack of production. And even towards the end of the year, he started losing his starting role to the backup Braylon Allen. So can he maintain his skill and his prospect in this next season, especially when you now have a dual threat quarterback at Justin Fields in at quarterback, which can really boost their running back's potential, as we saw in Baltimore, where Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson combined for almost 3,000 yards. My next question here is for the Las Vegas Raiders, and that question is simply, is it enough? The Las Vegas Raiders this offseason went out and got themselves a bunch of new acquirees. For example, Geno Smith, Ashton Genty in the draft, a bunch of defensive pieces, a bunch of other offensive pieces. The question is it enough to get you out of the poverty that you are in, especially in the stacked division that you were in, where 3 of the teams made the playoffs last season, and 2 of those teams have a lot of potential to grow and got better than this offseason, especially the Denver Broncos, who might even win the division over Kansas City for the first time in a very long time. So is it enough to bring yourselves into maybe a positive record, or are you going to be competing for the 1 seed once again? And this really relies on Geno Smith. My next question is for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And once again, I don't like to be really focusing on the offense this much, as pretty much everything has been about offense for these questions, but that's really just what it's been. My question here is pretty obvious, is Trevor Lawrence the guy? Trevor Lawrence was once the first overall pick in the draft, and his rookie year, he wasn't very good, and he hasn't performed well, but then he had that one season where he had an absolutely elite performance. I wouldn't say it's one of the best performances in the league, but it was a very good performance, and it instilled a lot of hope into the Jacksonville Jaguar fans. And then the following year, he was included in one of the greatest team collapses of the past decade, as they absolutely fell off. Now they got him Brian Thomas Jr. in the past draft. They got him Travis Hunter in this draft, who's going to be playing some time at wide receiver, if not full-time. So the question is, will that be enough to prove if Trevor Lawrence is good or not? Obviously, he got hurt in the middle of last year, and when Mac Jones stepped in, he actually performed better than a lot of people once thought. So the main question is, can Trevor Lawrence prove himself? Because if not, you have a quarterback who's not performing well on a contract that is one of the highest in the league. My next question is for the Chicago Bears, and that question is it enough to help Caleb Williams? Caleb Williams was drafted with the first pick in the draft last year, and people thought that he was a generational talent. He would immediately come in and be one of the best players in the NFL. The truth is, he did not do that, but one of the big criticisms and one of the big points about why that happened is because of his weapons and his O-line. He was great with DJ Moore, who was a very productive receiver in Carolina before he was traded, and then he was very productive along with Justin Fields when he was their quarterback. So is it going to be enough? They made a bunch of additions in this offseason, but they seemingly do that every year. Joe Thuney, who's the guy on the screen, is one of the biggest moves that they made, as he is supposed to be one of their best players in the league already, one of their best players on the roster. So can he be enough to help? Because whenever I watched Caleb Williams last year, I saw that man running for his life and throwing into triple coverage because everything else was clamped in quadruple coverage. My next question is for the Cowboys, and once again, this is a very easy one, and that is, when is enough Jerry Jones enough? A prime example of that is with Micah Parsons right now, in the place where they refuse to pay him, even though he is extremely young and already one of the best players in the NFL as a total among all positions. What is going on inside of Jerry Jones' old head? He's been the manager for such a long time, and at some point, at any point, they just need to fire him and get him out of the league, because he has done nothing to help the Cowboys in these past years. That includes hiring Brian Schottenheimer when people like Mike Vrabel were out there as options for head coach. A bunch of other stuff has really just been a kicker for them year after year after year, as the Cowboys, who were supposed to be in the Super Bowl nearly every year for the past few years, haven't even been able to make it past the wild card round, which has been a very difficult challenge for them. My next question is for the Baltimore Ravens, and this question is, what is enough help for Lamar Jackson? Lamar Jackson is one of the best players in the NFL among all positions. He's the best quarterback in league, in my opinion, and he was obviously shown in that AP first-team All-Pro, which he was given last year. But when is enough support enough? Ravens have one of the best defenses and one of the best offenses in the league, but they can never make it in deep to the playoffs. They've never made it to the Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson, despite having last year one of the most talented rosters in the entire NFL. And at this point, I don't know how they're going to do. One of their other big questions is about Derrick Henry, and because he is one of the oldest running backs in the league, he might start to fall off at some point. And when he does, I assume it's going to be a very big fall off, considering he's already surpassed the NFL running back prime by about 3 or 4 years. So is he going to start falling off? And will the rest of the Ravens hype up and turn into the Super Bowl team that we all know they can be? Because every year, they are big in Super Bowl odds. My next question is for the Cincinnati Bengals. And my question for them is, how much reliant can you be on your offense? Obviously, they have one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, one of the highest paid wide receiver ones in the league, and one of the highest paid wide receiver twos in the league. And actually, the wide receivers are the most highest paid at their respective position. But then again, when you look at their defense, you don't see anything special except for Trey Hendrickson and maybe Shamar Stewart. And those are two guys who the Bengals are not having a good time with. With Trey Hendrickson, they keep refusing to give this man a contract when in reality, he just led the NFL in sacks, the entirety of the NFL in sacks. So when can he get a contract? Because they seem to not have the ability to give him a contract because all their money is on the offense. And then you look at Shamar Stewart, their first-round draft pick, who refuses to sign his contract because they keep adding a bunch of pork and a bunch of stupid stuff in it, which just is stuff that they've never done for any other rookie and none of their offensive players. Only for Shamar Stewart, and he wants to be treated fairly, but they won't seem to let him. So what is the play? How much reliant are you able to be on your defense? Because your offense is horrible. My next question is for the Arizona Cardinals, and this is another relatively easy one. It is, can Kyler Murray finally live up to the hope? Kyler Murray was a very highly drafted quarterback, and honestly, he was drafted to both the NFL and the MLB, and that's how athletic he was. The only question is, can he pull together for a whole season? Kyler Murray has some of the highest upside in the league. His mobility and throw under pressure and his ability to throw the ball into coverage with just trusting his receivers is some of the best in the entirety of the NFL. But we only see that sometimes. It appears only about 50% of the time Kyler Murray plays like an elite quarterback, one of the best in the league. And then half the times he plays like he is one of the worst in the league. He's up and down, but the question is, can he pull together for a whole season? My next question is for the Seattle Seahawks. And my question for them is, what you did, is it enough to help to bring you back to what you were? In this offseason, they made a bunch of different moves. For example, offloading Geno Smith to the Raiders, and in response, signing Sam Darnold, who just had his first breakout season at the age of 28 years old. They also offloaded DK Metcalf to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and in response, they brought in the man that we were watching right now, Cooper Kupp, who is way older than DK Metcalf, and also more injury-prone than DK Metcalf, but has some of the best hands in the league. So can he be a good replacement? Will Jackson Smith and Jigba step up? They added a bunch of pieces to the offensive line. Can they step up as there aren't incredible superstars there, and they were one of the worst in the league last year? Then also with their defense, they let a bunch of people go, and they signed a bunch of people. So will it be enough? My next question is for the Packers. And the thing about the Packers is there are two really big questions for them, in my opinion. And the one that I want to talk about today is about their secondary and Jair Alexander. So recently, the Packers released Jair Alexander due to his personality and the way that he was very destructive, and then another way in which he was getting paid a lot of money for him being hurt most of the time, which is his third issue. But he was the holder of their secondary. He was really the guy that made their secondary what it was last year. Of course, they had Xavier McKinney, who they signed from the Giants, who was an absolutely incredible player and really broke out, was second in interceptions in the league as his first year as a Packer. But Jair Alexander was really the guy who made up that secondary. And now their secondary is so barren that they are creating different players for their secondary. They made their wide receiver Bo Melton switch to corner. And from what we've seen for him, he has not been a great corner for them. So can their secondary hold up to their standards, and can they replace Jair somehow in some way, especially when they didn't trade him, they released him. My next question is for the San Francisco 49ers, and that question is, can they live off of the absolute horrific offseason that they just had? They were tied for the most picks in the draft, in which they got a bunch of people with high potential, but they offloaded so much of their stacked roster. That includes people like we're watching now, Andre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, Deebo Samuel, who is falling off. Pretty much most of their incredible defensive pieces in general, a lot of their great offensive pieces, and they're all gone. So can the 49ers bounce back? Last year they had a very much down season due to injuries, but let's not forget that a year before that, they, in fact, made the Super Bowl, and this is actually footage of Dre Greenlaw falling down before the Super Bowl and tearing his ACL. The question is, can they overcome this horrific offseason, and can their draft picks really stand up? My next question is for the Tennessee Titans, and it's not, can Cam Ward do it? The question is, does he have enough support to do it? Of course, he was drafted the first overall pick, and I have hope for him. My question is, does he have enough help to bring him to what his potential is? Their wide receiver one right now consists of Calvin Ridley, and their big wide receiver piece last year was DeAndre Hopkins, which midseason got traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. So can they do it? They signed Xavier Restrepo in the offseason as a UDFA, but then they also happen to get rid of Nick Westbrook-Akine, who turned out to be a very good piece for them. So can they do it? They have Chigozie Okonkwo, who's one of my favorite tight ends in the league. They have a decent running back duo, depending on how they both perform, of Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. So does he have enough to help him? My next question is for the Buffalo Bills, and that question is, can somebody else step up to pair with Khalil Shakir as Josh Allen's main weapon? Of course, as we know, Khalil Shakir turned out to break out this past year, as many of us thought he would, to help Josh Allen bring himself to the MVP and AFC divisional round player that we thought he could be. But will somebody else step up? They recently got rid of Matt Collins, who was my projected pick to step up. But they do also have rookie Keon Coleman, who played an incredible season at times last year, but he didn't play exactly how they wanted him to. He didn't produce like they wanted him to, but he has a great personality. He's a big locker room piece in the terms of helping them stay positive, and he can make catches like no other receiver in the league. So can he step up to be what they need him to be? My next question is for the Los Angeles Rams, and it is, can Matthew Stafford still hold on? Matthew Stafford is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, definitely in that top 20 to 30 spot. And he has been an incredible player over the last few years, but he is 37 years old, which is around the cutoff for quarterbacks, especially those like Matthew Stafford, who honestly should have been bad a couple years ago. And this has been the question for them the last few years. Can he be enough for them? Because he is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league right now. I have him in my top 10, maybe top 15. He's one of the greatest players in the league in getting the ball exactly where you want it and extending those plays. And he has been elite for the past couple years, but is this the year that he finally falls off? He is, of course, supported by a decent offensive line. Puka Nacua, our newly acquired Devontae Adams, Tyler Higbee when he's healthy, which he barely never is, and then also Kyron Williams and his backup Blake Corum. So is it enough for Stafford to keep playing at his high level? My next question is for the New England Patriots, and it is, can you help Drake May? Drake May was their third overall pick a couple of years ago, or your second pick a couple of years ago. And my question is, do you have enough help for him? His first year, he struggled after he played a bunch of games as a backup behind Jacoby Brissett. He came in and he was honestly really good. He threw a bunch of great balls, but he had a horrible wide receiver core, a horrible offensive line, and a decent defense. So what can he do? He played great for what he had, even though he kind of struggled. But now he has people like Will Campbell, a newly acquired offensive lineman, Stephon Diggs, along with other offensive weapons that they acquired over the offseason. They also have a few new defensive pieces like Milton Williams that they got over the offseason, which they had one of the best in the league. So is it enough to help him get to his potential that he sort of showed last year? My next question is for the Denver Broncos. My question for them is it finally your year to beat Kansas City for the division championship? And that is it your time to beat Los Angeles for the division championship? Denver last year had a breakout season as they were thought to be one of the worst teams in the league. They were thought to be maybe a 1-seed contender. But then their rookie quarterback, Bo Nix, absolutely balled out and really elevated everybody on his offense. A bunch of their defensive pieces like Patrick Surtain, Nick Bonito, a bunch of basically everybody on their defense really stepped up to make one of the best in the league. Meanwhile, Kansas City was on the down chart as they traded away a few of their good players over the offseason as they were struggling with Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, as we previously discussed. So is it enough to finally take that title from them that they have held for so long? And is it their time to maybe even go to the Super Bowl, maybe even win the Super Bowl, as they look way better than they had in the previous few years? My next question is for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and my question for you is, will Aaron Rodgers be your guy for the season? Because Aaron Rodgers had a very much of a down year last year, but in New York, but he still didn't play bad. He had 3,800 yards and a decent touchdown to interception ratio. He wasn't the top of his stat categories as he normally is, but that just comes with him being over 40 years old, and he is really just the exaggerated version of Matthew Stafford, where he's older and he looks way worse. But can he lead the Steelers to their next 9-8, 10-7 season where they make the playoffs? It's a big question, as they have also traded away a bunch of people. They traded away George Pickens and replaced him with DK Metcalf, who is an older and also aggressive version of George Pickens. And will they be able to tie it together and win with him? My next question is for the Carolina Panthers, and that question is, do they have enough support to see if Bryce Young is their guy? Bryce Young was their first overall pick a couple of years ago, and in his rookie year, he supported with the worst record in the entirety of the NFL, as he played horribly and didn't look good. The next season, he played a little bit, got benched for Andy Dalton, then came back, got benched, came back, and when he finally came back, he looked really good. But he didn't have enough weapons to truly show it. He had the oldest wide receiver in the NFL currently in Adam Thielen. He also had a rookie, Xavier Legette, who underperformed, Jalen Coker, who underperformed, Jatavion Sanders, who underperformed, a bunch of guys that just didn't play what they wanted to. Now they drafted Tedero McMillan, a wide receiver, in their first round of the draft, and there are high hopes for him. The other question is, with their other offseason moves, is it enough to see if he is the guy? They really stacked their running back room, which I think is a contingency plan in case he isn't. But then again, if he isn't and they want to play for the number 1 overall pick, they can replace him early, because this looks like a great quarterback class coming up. Obviously, he is still very young. He's only going into his 3rd season, in which it is not a contract year yet. The next year will be. But do they have enough help to finally see if he is worth the pick that they used, and if he is worth re-signing? My next question is for the Minnesota Vikings, and this is another very clear question, and it is, will J.J. McCarthy be your guy? Obviously, J.J. McCarthy in this previous draft 2 years ago was very questionable as a pick for them, and they signed Sam Darnold as a contingency plan, which turned out to work out as he got hurt in the preseason after playing only one game, which he looked good. But then again, he was playing against a bunch of backups, as he was playing with backups as well. But will he perform? We just saw Sam Darnold revive his career with the Vikings, as he had pieces such as Christian Darrisaw, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones, and TJ Hawkinson to really push him forward. So will the same happen with J.J. McCarthy? And is he the Vikings franchise quarterback going into their very hopeful future, as they have a great team and we're just the 4 seed in the NFC? My next question is for the New York Giants, and my question is, can their quarterback room sustain, and who will be their starting quarterback? It's very similar to the Browns, but they're in a way better situation. They, instead of having Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett, they have Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, and instead of having Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel, they had Jackson Dart in the first round. So my question is, who is going to be their starter in week 1, who I believe is going to be Russell Wilson, as he has proved to be very good back in Pittsburgh, as he played half the season and had a good half this season, and who will be started week 18, in which I believe it'll be Jackson Dart, unless they want him to sit behind Russ 2 years to really sharpen his skills like the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes behind Alex Smith. So what is going to be their plan of action this year? And if not, and if they don't produce, what is going to happen to their coaching system? My next question is for the Detroit Lions, and that question is, can Dan Campbell produce, and can Dan Campbell prove that he is the coach that we all think he is? Because a big thing with the Lions that was a very popular thing this year was the fact that they are one of the most aggressive teams when it comes to their coaching. Of course, they did have Dan Campbell along with Aaron Glenn and along with Ben Johnson, who are 2 of the best coordinators in the entirety of the league. as long as the fact that they had a stacked roster comprised of people such as Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph as a safety duo, Penei Sewell, Frank Ragnow, and a bunch of other pieces that really helped them, and they're one of the best offenses in the league. But something that really gets them in trouble sometimes is that play calling that is happening by Dan Campbell, in the way that he'll go for it on fourth and 7. And with a fake punt, and if they get it, then he's one of the best coaches in the league, and if he's not, then that's just Dan Campbell, and he needs to be punished for it. So what is the final conclusion? Is Dan Campbell an aggressive coach that is good, or bad that he's an aggressive coach? My final question is for the Houston Texans, and my question for them is going to be, does CJ Stroud have a good enough offensive line to produce? Because as we saw from his rookie year, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. My only question for him is, can he get the help that he needs? Because in his second year, his offensive line was one of the worst, if not the worst, in the entirety of the NFL. It's just like Caleb Williams, where he had good weapons, but this offensive line was so bad that it couldn't be helped. They were so bad that it made him look like a bad player himself, which is something that you really can't have your offensive line do. Now, what they did is they went out and they got a bunch of good players, and they got rid of Laramie Tunsil, who had one of the most penalty yards in the league last year. And they're looking to help him finally strive up to what he's going good to be, and the fact that he has Dalton Schultz, Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, and a bunch of other guys that can help him. So that is going to do it for the video, everybody. If you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe. I know it's a little bit of a long one, but I mean, these are some good questions for every NFL team. Tell me which ones you agree with in the comments below, and tell me if you want me to make a video detailing the answers to them at the end of next season. I know it's a little bit far away from that, but I think it could be fun. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.